Above all, education. I think primary education and secondary education, especially for women, but for all. I think health in our health sector has basically not delivered family planning services at all, or minimally so. So naturally, family planning has been something on the side. I think it has to be integrated. The female workforce is very substandard in terms of their training and in terms of their numbers. And women's empowerment, I think it was mentioned by Sheri Rahman Saiba, I think until and unless we empower our women, actually if our women were empowered and if we had a full primary education enrollment rates and we had double the number of women with secondary schooling, we wouldn't have what we call our population problem. And I think employment is something that my colleagues are going to talk about, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Next. If I can say that there's one ask from this audience, or I hope an outcome of this conference, it is to really underscore what we decided in 2019 as our Council of Common Interest goals. They were accepted by the federal government, by provincial governments, to bring down population growth rates to 1.1% by 2030. I feel optimistic it can be done, but without the political intent and executive decisions and financing, it's just not going to happen. But if those things come together, I think we can achieve that. Next. Similarly with fertility, as you can see that we were coming down much faster and we have slowed down. That rate can be restored, and I think we can come down to 2.2 by 2030. Only and only if we decide that that's what we want to do. Number 3. These are all policy decisions that are already accepted. They've been, the cabinet knows about them, the provinces know about them. So next would be, I've lost my sequencing, but I think maybe this is the most powerful slide that I can show you. This is research that we have done with the Guttmacher Foundation, which shows that amongst there are about 12.7 estimated pregnancies per year in Pakistan. About 6.7 million of these are wanted and planned pregnancies, but as many as 6 million pregnancies, the ones in orange, as declared by women themselves, are either mistimed or not wanted at all. If we have a strong family planning program, we could really remove or rather reduce those 6 million unwanted pregnancies and really focus on the other 6.7 that we could ensure in terms of better maternal mortality rates, child survival, etc. So this is what women want. This is what families want in Pakistan. And that is why I am confident that if there is an intent and a good family planning program, well-funded, with good quality services, there's no reason why Pakistan should be in the quandary. It's really, I think that we as a community have failed to provide that family planning program. We cannot blame people for it. Next. Coupled with that has to be an emphasis on an education emergency. I won't go into the whole literature, but it is really a proven thing in the demographic literature that if you have a generation that is fully enrolled in primary school, it's very, very unlikely that the demographic transition won't follow. And I think for that reason, but above all for reasons because it's a constitutional clause, it really means basically that if we trudge along, we are still going to have only 64% or 62% boys and girls in school. But if we just double the shifts of school, if we have female teachers in school and have co-ed schools, I think parents will have no problems. It's not the out-of-school population is huge, not because parents don't want their children to go to school. It's just that, again, it's a failure. I wouldn't want to point to any particular government for all the past few governments to really get up and say, this is an unacceptable figure. We have to do this and move forward. Next, please. I think, again, I will not really dwell much on labor force participation rates because they will be taken up by subsequent speakers, but just to point out, if there is a gap, the hugest gap that can be seen is that of the female workforce and actual labor force participation rates. I don't think any country can move ahead and talk about even reaching a demographic dividend or even reaching its full potential if only 24% of the women are employed in the labor force. And the gap is millions, about 50 million women who would be willing to work, they are in the working age population, but are not currently in the labor force. I think that has to be addressed through special quotas, through special microcredit programs. Other countries have done it. Cambodia has done it, poorer countries done it, Nepal has done it. So I don't think we are talking about anything outstanding that needs to be done. My final recommendation is something that we have a huge surge of working age, next please, working age population in the making, and additional jobs are required regardless of whether we reduce our fertility. We're still faced with daunting numbers that are just standing to enter the labor force, and some sort of skill program that matches and job opportunities. You already have a very high unemployment rate. We will be in a real demographic economic crisis. So let me end by saying that I think that, next please, that I hope that the finance minister will be here soon. I would like, hopefully, the representatives from the Planning Commission to really take this up, and we will take it up also directly with SN Iqbal Saab, that we really need to declare some sort of human development emergency for the next 5 years. However, if we are going to meet the SDGs, unless some of these, or at least most of these things happen in the next 5 years, I think we'll be really very ashamed to even attend that conference. We'll be way, way behind. We have to reduce fertility, eliminate at least the unwanted births and unplanned births, which I told you are in the millions, ensuring universal primary education and removing at least half of the out-of-school population. If we don't do this in the 5 years, we're just frankly never going to do it. And double women's participation in the labor force, and of course improve the skills and do different skilling and not the kind of higher education we have today. Last but not least, I think this will require, I know Shari Rahman Sahib has stopped of it, but last slide please. Structural reforms will have to be made. I think UDAN program sounds very good, but I think we are proposing, it's Dr. Arif's idea here, a 6th pillar, which should be a 6th E, empowering people, and it should be about human development. The NFC that meets day after tomorrow, or 2 days' time, has to talk and is going to talk about the reduction of weightage to population, and instead talk more about an offsetting fund to top up or to reward the provinces and regions for achieving and help them achieve key development indicators such as reducing the out-of-school population, reducing infant mortality, especially improving female secondary education. And I think the Population Commission/Council that the Prime Minister has already decided to set up, I think this can administer the whole program and also manage the fund that Ms. Shari Rahman talked about. Thank you very much. I stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Zeba Sathar, for your informative presentation. I would now like to invite Dr. Hanid Mukhtar, Fellow, Consortium for Development Policy Research, to present his insights.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. For the last few days, I was fretting about that I had a lot to talk about and only 7 minutes to do that. And now I'm told that I don't even have 7 minutes. But that's okay. A huge thank you to Senator Shari Rahman. She said probably all that I have to say, except for some hardcore data facts, which I will present very quickly to you. The chart that you see on the screen is the trend in per capita income of Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. And as you see, a few things. Pakistan per capita income has been growing at the rate of 3.6% per year. So our standard of living is still increasing despite our very rapid growth in population. But if you look at the trend, in 1990, Pakistan per capita income was 56% higher than that of India and almost double that of Bangladesh. You fast forward it to 2024, Bangladesh is 53% higher GDP per capita than Pakistan, and India is higher by 71%. So if you find these trends very surprising, let me add to that surprise that in 1990, China had a per capita income which is half of that of Pakistan, and in 2024 it had 4 times the per capita income of Pakistan. As you can see, the gap is increasing and increasing at about 3% per year. So if you want to call that relative imbalances have been increasing very rapidly. And that gap, 3% gap, is 70% because of higher GDP growth in Bangladesh and India, and 30% because of their lower population growth. So if we attribute this gap to population, that 30% means nothing because that's just a arithmetical calculation and nothing else, because that's a direct effect of population growth. There's ample research available which suggests that population growth also impacts our numerator, the GDP growth. And there are multiple pathways from which the population growth impacts GDP growth. Next slide, please. I would just pass on these because Senator Rahman has talked quite in detail about the per capita availability of water and per capita availability of agricultural land, which we all know is declining very sharply. The agriculture census for 2024 just came out, and it suggests that 25% of the farms in Pakistan are now below 1 acre, and 78% farms are below 5 acres. And there are much wiser people than I sitting in the hall today who can tell you the economic implication of this fragmentation. But I'll pass on this and move to the next slide, which is just taking a change in tack. It is the fiscal resources available per capita. I would not dwell too much on the revenue side. I'll talk more about the expenditure side. Because this expenditure is basically telling you the amount, both the quality and the quantity of public infrastructure and public services that are provided per capita. 1993, we were all about the same level. Bangladesh was a bit lower. Pakistan, India was at the same level. 2023, India is about 3 times, spending 3 times, public expenditure being 3 times that of Pakistan per capita. So even if we don't see too much of difference in public infrastructure quality and quantity in India and Pakistan today, watch out, next 5 years, they are going to leapfrog us like anything. Next slide, please. Now coming to the other pathway from which the population impacts GDP. The first entry point for the population to impact GDP is the saving rate. We all know when the population increases, even at the household level, if you have more mouths to feed, the first impact is going to be on saving and even on investment at the household level, whether that be investment in their future wealth or investment in human capital. Per capita expenditure at the household level on education, health, even on food declines when there is one more person to feed. So our saving rate in 1976 was about 15%, and we are at 13% now. While India and Bangladesh are into mid-30s already. So with 13% of saving rate, we aren't going anywhere. Reason is because saving finance investment. Saving finance even your fiscal deficit. So if you have that load, that was the reason why our fiscal deficit is such a huge problem for us. India has been running much higher fiscal deficit than us for the last 7, 8 years. But that's not a problem for us because their saving is so much higher. They can finance private investment and fiscal deficit without creating any distortions in the economy, but we cannot. Can we go back a slide because I want to talk a bit about investment. It's just a mirror image of the saving rate. Our investment rate at 14%, we were at 17% in 1976 and on 14% now. So our investment rate has declined, while that of Bangladesh and India are already into 30s, early 30s, 30% of GDP. So with 14% of GDP as investment, how fast can we grow? So that indirect impact of population, I'm not suggesting here that population has everything to do with this falling saving rate and almost stagnant investment rate. But if I suggest that it has nothing to do with it, that would be a lie. So population does impact saving, may not be as much as it is. There are other factors involved, similarly investment, but it does play a role. Next slide, please. This is an important issue because we economists have been brought up in the neoclassical economics that population is a resource in a way because higher population means higher labor force. Labor force is a factor of production, so our factor of production resource, the pool of factor of production improves as the population increases. Our first chart, it is the population to employment ratio. If you want to call it, it is the mouth to feed divided by the earning hands, if you like. We are much, much higher population to employment rate than in Bangladesh and India. Almost only 1/3 of the population support the entire population. So as far as being a resource, we have to think again because with this kind of a ratio, obviously it doesn't look like a resource, it looks more like a drain. The reason for this is, on my chart B, is the population under 15 years of age, which is not in the labor force. We have 37% of population under 15 years of age. And India and Bangladesh are in late 20s. And the second element is our female participation rate. While India's female participation rate declined in the early 2000s, the income effect, but ours has never been in the ballpark. We have been always lower female participation rate than our South Asian neighbors. So these are the two reasons why our economic dependency rate, as I call it, is much higher than that of India and Bangladesh. So population from these three slides does not appear to be a resource. Even if it's a resource, it's not a net resource, it's more a net drain. Next slide. The other issue is that because of our low investment, which is indirectly related to our population growth, our capital labor ratio is much, much lower than that of India and about the same, at present at least, that of Bangladesh. Why is that important? Because that is a factor which provides productivity to your labor. More capital, more productive the labor is going to be. So, and then you have the human capital issue here. If you look at my chart B, our labor force, only 29% has basic education, while that of India and Bangladesh, they are in mid-40s. So we don't have human capital element, we don't have physical capital element. So the productivity is clearly, you can see in chart C, has been more or less stagnant, while that in Bangladesh and India has been rising quite sharply. So we keep on talking about labor being a productive resource, but the data doesn't show that. Next slide. So I don't think I need to talk about what the key takeaways are. As per the UN projections, Pakistan dependency ratio would become equal to that of India and Bangladesh because sooner or later they would have this aging of population problem. But that is going to happen only after 2058. We have still 33 years to go. And if somebody believes that after 2058, let's sit back and let the natural course of population dynamics take its direction, and we will eventually catch up with India and Bangladesh in economic well-being, it's not going to happen because my last slide of productivity. Because by that time, India and Bangladesh would have accumulated so much capital, so much higher capital than Pakistan, that they would keep on increasing the gap for a few more decades before we start to catch up with them. So if we are looking at a century maybe, then perhaps we would catch up if we do all the things right now and let the population take its course, or we act on both the economy side and the population side and try to close the gap sooner than that. I stop here. Thank you very much.
I would now like to invite Dr. G.M. Arif, the former Joint Director, Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, to come and say a few words.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm not following my presentation because of the time constraint. I may take only 3 or 4 minutes to present my views. If you see, the topic of my discussion is on urban demographic transition in Pakistan. When we talk the urban demographic transition, it is basically combining two concepts. One is the demographic transition and other is the urban transition. And these two are interconnected and interdependent and also sequential. Firstly, demographic transition creates condition for urbanization. Then later urbanization contributes in fertility reduction. This is what has happened in all parts of the world. And during this process, we can see a shift in the society and economy from primary and rural sector to the urban industrial sector. Now, if you see the situation of Pakistan, what my research shows that in terms of demographic transition, it has contributed in urban transition because of mortality decline between 1950 and particularly 1990, but did not decline of the fertility. It has created a space for urbanization to go up. And this demographic transition, mainly through the mortality decline, we have seen an increase in urbanization from 18% in 1950 to almost 40% in 1923. But if you see the contribution of urbanization in terms of fertility decline, this contribution is quite low. At the moment, there is a gap of fertility between rural and urban areas, but two things in urban areas are quite important for this topic. The first is that we have not seen any city or the overall urban area in Pakistan which has experienced the replacement level of fertility. Still in urban areas, TFR is 3, and in rural areas, TFR is 4. And second is, during the last 2 decades, there is no change in fertility even in urban areas. Fertility is constant for 3. What is the reason? My submission and my research shows that the main reason is that our economy has not transformed from primary rural sector to the urban industrial sector. If we have done this one, then situation would have been much better in terms of the demographic and urban transition. I think just the future ahead, our urbanization has provided a good base, but if we can do 3 and 4 policy intervention, I hope in next 2 decades we will be in a much better position. The first thing is the industrial growth, particularly in the urban area. Second is the rural-urban connectivity. And third is to improve the quality of urbanization, we need to strengthen the city governments. Human capital, as we have said, and the final is to control or to reduce or get the target of fertility decline. If we can combine this sectoral and human development approach, then through this urban demographic transition, we can achieve the balance and we can be in a better position. Otherwise, we may achieve the urbanization level of 50%, which is called the completion of urban transition, but we may not be in a better position. So we need to keep the balance between these two and to get a better situation in next coming decades. Thank you very much.
Yes, I request Sam Waldock, the Development Director of British High Commission in Pakistan, to come to the podium. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and a really warm good morning to all of you distinguished ministers, guests, friends. And let me just start by thanking, as others have, the Dawn Media Group and Population Council for creating this really very important space. A space that allows us to discuss, to confront one of Pakistan's most important development challenges. That is restoring the population balance by 2050. And my message this morning is that progress is possible. Now, this morning we've majored, haven't we, on the economic case, and I'm privileged to be with a panel of 3 doctors. I'm afraid I'm the only non-doctor on the panel, but putting forward the economic case, and it's great to see the Honourable Minister of Finance here as well, lending your support. But the economic case is very, very clear. We've seen excellent progress on economic stabilisation, real gains, the policy rate down to 11%, inflation's come right down. But there is this structural challenge that Senator Sherry Rahman just mentioned. Our population is growing faster than our ability to educate, to employ, and to empower. And that means that every school, every hospital, every job market is under strain. And if we don't act now, then the dream of a prosperous, stable Pakistan will remain out of reach. But with the right policy levers, progress is possible, and we've seen it happen elsewhere. Because population growth isn't an isolated issue. It's deeply connected to a number of other agendas, and we've been starting to unpack that this morning, and we're going to keep doing that over the next few days. It's connected to education, it's connected to health, gender equality, jobs, climate change. Consider this. 18% of women want family planning, but cannot access it. Our contraceptive prevalence rate is just 34%. That is behind Iran at 82%, India at 67%, and Bangladesh at 64%. Pakistan only needs $30 million to meet contraceptive demand against a $62 billion government budget. This is fiscally achievable. This is doable stuff. And early marriage, we know, compounds the challenge. 18% of girls marry before they're 18. Those who marry early have 1.6 more births than those marrying later. And we know that passing child marriage restraint bills, as a number of provinces have done, improving registration systems can change this trajectory. We also know education is a game changer. Pakistan has 26 million out-of-school children. 53% of those children are girls. And we know that women with secondary school education have 6.5% lower fertility. Every extra year of schooling delays marriage. It opens doors to jobs and lowers fertility. Yet we also know labour force participation remains at just 24%. The global average is 51%. But when women work, fertility drops, families prosper, and economies grow. And this requires policy changes that are achievable, changes to transport, childcare, workplace safety, so women feel secure and supported. But finally, we know that success is ultimately about leadership at every level. And that's why I'm so encouraged to see all of us here today in this room having this conversation. Each one of us leaders on this issue. Because we know that if we act now, we can make progress. We can restore the balance. We can unlock potential, secure a future where every Pakistani thrives. But this is now really urgent. The time to act is not tomorrow, it's today. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes session 2. We will now be segueing to session 3, titled Accelerating Economic Growth Towards a More Optimal Balance. In this session, we will examine how population trends intersect with economic growth and development. Our participants for this session are Senator Mohammad Aurangzeb, Federal Minister for Finance and Revenue, Her Excellency Jane Marriott, CBG OBE, British High Commissioner, Dr. Akbar Zaidi, Executive Director, IBA Karachi, Dr. Ali Chima, Vice Chancellor of LUMS, and Balorma